thank you for having me. I'm going to talk about automated valuation models, the coolest thing around. I will not go into the technical stuff because I was said that the audience here are not that familiar with the topic. So I will keep it quite easy. But if you have questions to me, you can, of course, of technical art, you can ask me them afterwards. And of course, I can also answer questions in Swedish if somebody don't want to ask questions in English. So, automatic valuation models is like statistical models aiming to predict value of an asset, a commodity, or a service using data. And this has been revolutionized by big data. So the data, the amount of data that is available has exploded. So less than 10 years ago, I did research in real estate using maybe a couple thousand data. And that was huge data at that time. Now I'm suddenly using data that is less than 1 million unique observations. So it has completely changed. And also data power. So that has also changed from being able only to use very simple regressions to having a lot of more cubes. So machine learning, artificial intelligence. So completely changed the map of the world. So we are interested here in valuation. So we then means different types of techniques to try to predict or estimate the value of a specific property at a stated time and place. So that is sort of the definition. Historically, this valuation of real estate has been extremely costly, time-consuming, and it has required a high level of expertise. But now, with automated valuation model, it is becoming free, instant, and everybody can do. So everything is going to change. And we already have this in some kind of smaller platforms, at least in Norway. So it's not in a distant future, it's a very close to where we are now. And further down the road, we will have this also for all types of properties. And as we said here, real estate will come first, and then all other types of assets and commodities and services. So we will have these types of valuation models for everything. It's only a matter of when do we have enough data and people doing the estimation, so being the first ones. So real estate is the front runners in this area, and everybody will come after. But we are the front runners because we have the best data. So we are already seeing a transformation of big industries. So of course, real estate agents are using AVMs now as digital support systems when they're proposing list price, asking price. So that is like totally common use of AVMs. I guess real estate brokers doesn't really know anymore, at least in Norway, how to do price setting by themselves. They basically use the computer. So they have a AVM tool available, and that is doing the main part of the job. So they just are experts in using the AVMs and adjusting them. Secondly, bank, who is of course a major industry, is real estate. So 50% of the balance sheet is typically real estate, and now already they are using mass appraisals, AVMs basically, in their stress testing, and also when they decided if they want to give out new loans, they use AVMs. So that this is sort of the basic tools, and I will talk more about this later today in the brown bag seminar called the Hawk. And in the end here, of course, also taxation of properties are more and more becoming AVMs. So that is globally. But we have also the growing industries of PropTechs. So, and here AVMs is in the core of almost everything going on in the PropTechs. And PropTechs is, of course, a fast-growing industry. So then you have the transaction side. So you have iBuy companies. Okay, they haven't been that successful, but maybe in the future it will be easier because the algorithms will improve. You have self-sale. Yes, that has come available basically because you now both the buyer and the seller know more about the value. And then you have different types. Okay, you can split up properties in smaller pieces and have easier transactions because you know more about the price. So this hasn't come yet, but it probably will. Appraisals, yeah, we are working now. So I actually, all these bullet points, I'm working with PropTech companies at the moment on each and every one of them. So we are trying to improve appraisal, both the process and how customers can read them, and we are using AVMs as a tool to do so. And next, you have, okay, we are looking at renovations. So which renovations is profitable? Okay, if you have a good AVM, that can help us knowing what to do in advance. Architecture will completely change because we soon will know which part or what properties are customers willing to pay for. So we goes from something that architects have like, oh, we're thinking of different things, we think this is good, to knowing what's good and what buyers are willing to pay for. New construction. So programming dwellings and lands will soon completely change because we know more about, well, what the value is. And of course, pricing on new developments. And this is in the close future because we are working on it now with companies, with the industry. Here, just a little bit. So automated valuation models has a lot of other names. So I guess AVMs is more and more becoming the front runners among the names. But when you do research, you will find a lot of other names being used for the same thing. And traditionally, hard coding has been used in AVMs, but now more and more are becoming machine learning because of what I said, better data power and better tools there. So time's flying. So why is AVMs such a good tool in real estate? First of all, so here we have a digital support system with AVM here called AVM. So it's a Norwegian tool. So this is the typical data set. So we have a lot of features. We know an awful lot of the properties. We have pictures. Now we are starting to include pictures in AVMs as well. And then we have typically this not only a cross-section data set, but a panel data set where we have future prices and a lot of data. So we have a lot of data about properties, and that makes it well used for AVMs. So here is the basic concept. So AVMs makes use of the same comparison approach for pricing. So what we do is, by having this huge data sets of previous transactions, we are able to estimate the value of each component of a dwelling. So element pricing for those of you who know that. And by adding up all these pieces, we are able to predict sales prices. And here, modern LMs also make use of this repeat sales, so this panel structure. So, because of this, machine learning is a very useful tool for doing this type of predicting. So what we are typically do is something like this. We have a data set, and then we train these machine learning algorithm, and then we test what we do. So we have in-sample training and out-of-sample testing. And then when we get more data, we can do this over and over again. And here is sort of the next question. So what is the relevant data? So historically, we have used these hedonic attributes. So all this information about the dwelling itself. So that is what we have been using, and quite successful. But in future, maybe we will try to include also these other types of attributes. So at least this one. So the sales process attributes. Not, of course, we can't know what those will be in the future, but we can know how they have looked historically, and then we can improve our models. Because, for example, if the weather was bad, maybe that has influenced the prices negatively. Or some other types of properties with sales, maybe for some construction work outside or whatever. In the total price, buyer attributes will be there as well. So in the total market price, we have something about the buyers here, but that will typically be unknown, at least in Western countries. Here we have a list over different types of machine learning techniques, and this is basically the main groups and not necessarily the best techniques. So there are a lot of them. And some of the research literature has been like, who is the best? But my point is that that is not necessarily to know. And that is because of stacking. So yes, we can include all of it. So here was a research paper where we included 4 types of machine learning techniques and a repeated or several repeated sales indexes. But what we did was that we used stacking and used machine learning to decide when we were using information from each of them. And when we do that, it doesn't really matter which of the techniques, who is the best. So repeated sales here, for example, will not beat XGBoost, who typically is the one who will win if you test them against each other, but it makes use of new data. And by making use of new data, it adds information to the total stacking model. So that is the main idea. And then I'm talking fast and things like that. So actually, I'm almost done. So here is some results from a stacking model. So this was quite quick and dirty. So we used a couple of months, quite small data set as well. and we then use comparison with actual real estate brokers. And yes, it's a little bit, it's not as good as a real estate broker. Knowing here, of course, that the real estate broker uses AVM as well, but it's pretty close to include such a short time and using so little data. So AVMs in the future will probably be sort of available for all companies in quite short time, because it's so easy to make. So it doesn't need to be very complicated. So it's something you can just pick from a shelf and then incorporate in your business. Yes, that is it. Thank you.